Today we got a Toyota 4Runner, and we're gonna live, laugh, learn, or whatever the white girls say. She's in for a power steering leak of some kind, so we get her checked out. The very, 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 very unusual place of the steering rack hard lines. The hard lines that go from one side of the rack to the other. From what I understand, these tubes balance fluid from one side to the other. As you turn it one way, it pushes one way, the other, and so forth for power assist. Now I have a genius idea, and I mean genius idea of using this nickel copper brake line material. Now hear me out. Here's my theory. It's always a pain in the butt to try and bend these steel lines to match basically OEM lines, which in theory doesn't really matter. They just got to be somewhat close to the same length as what the original ones were. Doesn't really matter how they're orientated as long as they're not going to run into anything. So my theory was to use this nickel copper style brake line stuff because it's extremely flexible. You can sit there and you can bend it by hand and it's no issue at all. So now I'm just basically trying to bend this exact same way that the other one was. Doesn't have to be exact, but at least the same shape and close to the same length would be nice. So we're getting it a little bit worked up here. It's nothing pretty at all, but it's getting at least close. This material is so much easier to try and bend and stuff than the steel is. That steel is such a pain in the butt. So after getting it pretty close here, I feel like I'm going to mock it up and then probably just bend it a little bit once I have both sides screwed in together. So I start threading this side in, and this is about right where I start learning some new cuss words. The fitting on the end of this that I thought I had measured right is completely wrong. So back to the drawing board we go. I got to cut off the fittings on both sides of the steel line so I could swap them over to the other line, and then reflare them, and then refix them. So how's everybody else's day going so far? Because mine's just gravy. Either way, these little tube cutters are pretty good. Pretty dang nice. So you just sit here, tighten it, spin it, tighten it, spin it, and then it rolls right off. So once we do that, I'll swap that fitting over. You do want to check that edge just to make sure that it doesn't get all marred up. Swap that fitting over first, make sure it's all good. This sticker's kind of in the way just a little bit here, but either way, it'll end up working out okay. Just cleaned it off a tiny bit, and then I'm going to grab that flare tool and start trying to get ready to flare it. Now you got to put it right through the correct size tubing hole, or else that thing will not pinch it and you'll be trying to flare it and it'll just shove the tube right through its own housing, which is always a delight. So you want to put it through like that, then grab your little fitting piece and then measure it. Now you're measuring it because you only want to push this down so far to be able to flare the end of it. You don't want a huge mushroom at the end, and you don't want a very small one. So this is quite important about trying to get it right to where it'll sit inside the fitting just right and be nice. So basically what I do is I fit it up right to the edge of where that flat plate is, and how thick that is how much I have stick out. Just like that. Looks pretty decent. So then we're going to snug it down. Always make sure you snug it down. You definitely want a good grip on that line, that way it doesn't slide out. The other option is if you put it in the wrong hole too, it'll crush the tube itself. So to make sure to put your little flare fitting in the end of it, then grab a hold of your flare tool, slide that over the top, wind it down. And once you got it wound down, you're going to want to put a couple of turns on that. Now keep in mind it is easier with this type of material, so you don't want to go too tight. And then once you get your little fitting out of there, look at that. Nice little bubble. Looks nice and pretty. So here we are. We're going to tighten it down. Basically the same as before, just, with the right fittings this time. And what do you know? It threads right in. Look at that. It's a miracle when you got the right size fitting on the end of the hose. So I'm going to tighten this down most of the way before I go to the other side and tighten it down. I'm not going to fully snug it up because once you do, the hose doesn't like to twist or turn or anything like that. So put both sides on first. And then here we are, we're going to test it. And then son of a woo-wee! Looks like the other line. So we ended up having to do both lines. I went back and I did the other one because I was so dang pissed off that I could have fought the sun for being too damn bright. I was so beyond mad. But here's the finished product, and it does look pretty. But I will say, this customer called me about 2 weeks later after this had been repaired with the same exact issue. This nickel copper is way too soft, and I'm assuming the vibrations cause it to break. So in the end, we ended up doing this out of steel lines. Now a lot of shops will just replace the rack. And to us, that's kind of ridiculous. So when we learn, we figure you should too. Appreciate each and every one of you. Like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for more honesty.